Hey everyone, my name is Zach. I'm a collaborator here at Forward Thinking Designs. And in this video, in the Ottomater Getting Started series, we're going to go over how to add Ottomater to a show and program that show from scratch. So in front of us now, we have a really basic show file that's going to have a BGM player, a show player, a crossfader to fade between the two, a gain ramp to mute the system, some output processing, and then a line out. For control, we have a video server, a light controller, and two TVs to turn on and off. Let's start by bringing in Ottomater. And because we're going to use SMPTE to sync our cues to this audio player, let's also bring in a timecode reader. Now in the timecode reader, we're going to enable the timecode output. And in Ottomater, we're going to set our timecode to timecode, and we're going to use a 30 frame per second rate. And then we'll enable the external timecode pin and pin the reader into Ottomater. And we'll take our SMPTE signal and we'll wire that into the SMPTE reader. So now timecode will come into Ottomater. The other thing we need to do is we need to name some of the components that we want to control. So we'll call this the BGM player. Then we'll do the show player. And then we can just simply name some of these components as crossfader and system mute. We're also going to make sure that Ottomater has a license key. And we're going to start our design. All right, now that our design is running, we can go ahead and start programming Ottomater. For the goals of this show, there's a couple things we need to do. We need to have a start of day function that will turn on the TVs, trigger the video server, trigger the light controller, and start the BGM playback. We need to have an end of day function that stops all audio playback and turns off the TVs. We need to have a show start that fades the crossfader over to the show player and triggers the video server and the light controller, and a show stop function that returns us back to BGM playing. So let's start by creating a start of day function. So we're going to insert a cue. I'm going to call it start of day. And let's add some commands to it. So when we start the day, we want the TVs to turn on, which in this case, the TVs modules are command buttons, and I've set command 1 trigger to be the turn on function. So we'll have TV 1 turn on, and we'll have TV 2 turn on. So that covers the TVs. We also want the system to unmute. So I'm going to change the system 1 mute, and I'm going to change the mute function to a Boolean and off. I also need to make sure that the crossfader is on the BGM. So I'm going to select the crossfader and say crossfade to A. And this is also a Boolean value, so the target will be on. And once all that is done, I need to start playing the BGM. So I'm going to select the BGM player and trigger the play function. Now if I want to, I can make sure that the show player, if for some reason it was playing, is also stopped in this state. So I can add the show player and I can trigger the stop function. And I also need to set up lighting and start playing media off the video server. So I'll add 2 more commands. I'll do light controller and I'll trigger the first trigger, and I'll also select the video server, and I'll have it start playing anything that's in column 1. And this will be our default start of day. Now we can go ahead and add an end of day. And a lot of this stuff we just need to do in reverse. But one of the things we do want to do is we do want to fade out our audio gracefully at the end of the day. So I'm going to select System Mute, Mute, and change the Boolean value to on. And then to stop the audio once it's faded out, because I know that this mutes function takes about 2 seconds to run, I'll do show player, stop, and I'll also do BGM player, stop, but I'll change the time of these to 2 seconds after the initial mute. Now once we're here, we're also going to want to add functions to turn the TVs off, which I've set as command trigger 2. So that's a really basic end of day function. Now we're going to create a show start function. Now one of the things on the show start is if anything else is running in the background, I want to stop it. So I'm going to insert command, stop all commands. And let's make sure that we name that so we remember what it is. So to start the show, we're going to want to start playing the show player. And we're going to want to crossfade to the B input, which is the show player. And that's a Boolean value that we'll set to on. Now once this is playing, we're also going to want to tell the video server to start playing anything that's in column 2. And I'm going to tell my light controller to start playing trigger 2. Now I know for a fact it takes this video server just a couple of frames for it to grab the SMPTE signal, so we're just going to delay this so that there's no black video. Just by a half a second. Now we're going to add a show stop function. Which is going to stop all commands. It's going to crossfade back to A. And it's going to start the BGM player. And it's going to tell the lighting server to go back to trigger 1 and the video server to go back to column 1. Now another thing that we can do with stop all commands is that under show start, we can actually insert a command up at the beginning, and I want to enable timecode. And I can go ahead and move this up so it's one of the first command that runs. And as part of the show stop, I can add a disable timecode so that Ottomater won't trigger anything once this is running. Now I want to add some late cues to my show. Now because we're taking in timecode inputs, we can trigger those off of timecode. So I'm going to insert a cue. I'm just going to say it's going to be like Q1. And our timecode starts at 1 hour. So I'm going to do 1 hour. And 10 seconds in. And all this is going to do is it's going to trigger another light cue. So I'll have that trigger 3. And I can add a couple more of these cues. So now that we have the basic show programmed, we can go ahead and test it. So I'm just going to move this down a little bit. I'm going to bring up our crossfader here. I'm going to bring up our system mute. And I'll bring up our player and our show player. And actually, one thing that we can do that I forgot is we can actually make sure that these players, if they get set to anything else, are playing the file that we specified. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this file name so that anytime I'm playing the BGM, I can actually add a command just before I hit that play trigger that I want to set the BGM, I want to set the file name, and I want to set it as a string, text value, and I can paste in the file name that I want to set there. And I can do that anytime I'm playing that BGM. And I can also do that for the show file. And I want to move this up, so I'm going to set that as a time of 0. And I'll bump it up to just before the play function. All right, now we can go ahead. So we're going to do a start of day. So you can see the BGM has started playing. The crossfader has crossfaded to input A. And the system mute is unmuted. Now if I do a show start, you can see that the show player has started playing. We've crossfaded to B. And we're receiving timecode input, and the enable is running. And now you can see that it's taking these timecode cues as the timecode comes up. Now, one of the things we didn't do is we actually didn't put in a way to stop the show, but that's easy. So we're just going to trigger the show stop manually. So in this, let's also, while we're here, let's add a quick show player stop function, and we'll delay that so it gives it time to crossfade out. And unlike Q5, we want to stop the show just a couple seconds after this cue. So we're going to insert a command, and I'm going to say run a cue, show stop, and I'm going to run it 3 seconds after we trigger the last light cue. And I'm just going to name this show stop. So now if we run the show again, you'll see that the show player is running. The BGM is running, but we are cross-faded away from it. And we have timecode enabled. And you'll see as timecode is running, we are still taking the cues. But now, once we take Q5, it should stop the show a couple seconds after that cue. And bam, we've now crossfaded back to BGM. The show player has stopped running, and all the lights and video has returned to normal. Now what we can do to put this on a UCI is we can go under the Direct Cues tab here. And I'm going to create some direct cues based off the different buttons. So these are the major commands that we're going to use in our show. So I can stop the design. Then I can simply copy and paste these into a new UCI. I'm just going to call this show control. I'll drop in these buttons. I assigned this button to start of day, this one to end of day, and then we have a show start and a show stop. And we can give these some nice colors. So now if we run our design again, we can kick this window down a little bit. Let's go ahead and go back to our main window here. So now we can do a start of day. You'll see that we ran the start of day. And I'll move this down so we can see what's going on. I can do a show start. You'll see everything runs. I can stop the show at any point, and it will return back to its idle state. And I can do an end of day, which then mutes the system and stops all the players. I hope this was helpful to you. To learn more, please check us out at forwardthinkingdesigns.com. Thank you.